Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we are finally tackling our front and back garden. But while we do that, we thought we would share everything we learned during our house hunting journey. We are first-time buyers, and before we bought this place, we went to around 10 house viewings. We made a lot of mistakes, asked the wrong questions, and slowly figured out what actually matters when you are choosing a home. So if you are in that stage now, looking for your first house, hopefully this helps you spot a few things we didn't notice at first. Before we jump into the tips, our front garden hadn't been cared for in a long time. You'll see the before shots, the tools we used, and the transformation as we talk through everything we learned. The footage was created at the end of April, beginning of May this year, which was the perfect weather to finally get started. We grabbed our tools, laced up our shoes, and headed outside ready to finally tackle the garden. We honestly thought it would take maybe an hour or two, but it ended up taking 4 full sessions spread over almost 2 weeks. To be fair, we both work full-time, so we could only really get to it on weekends or after work. You will probably notice that's a running theme in our videos. A lot of weekend projects and after hours progress. So, while I started clearing the grass along the driveway edges, Greg got to work pulling out weeds, roots, and all. He really committed to it. While we are carrying out with the job, let's start with our tip number 1. We are starting simple. Check for central heating and the radiators. This might sound basic, but not every house has central heating. We found that out on our second viewing. The house looked great, lovely area, nice layout. But as we walked through, we realized there was only one radiator in the entire place. The estate agent later confirmed the owners only used a fireplace and a small heater. No central heating at all. Installing a full system can easily cost between 8 to 12,000 pounds, depending on the size of the house and the boiler you choose. That's a huge unexpected expense, especially right after buying. So when you are viewing a house, check every room for radiators. It's an easy way to confirm there is proper central heating already in place. I was definitely struggling with some parts. The grass and weeds felt like they would actually rooted themselves into the driveway. And since we were only using hand tools, progress was slow, to say the least. At this point, we didn't even have a lawnmower. But hey, slow and steady wins the race. Or at least that's what they say. I'm still not entirely sure who they are. Anyway, while we keep struggling out here, let's move on to the next tip on our list. The second tip might be quite obvious, but location matters more than you think. You can fix a kitchen or you can redo a bathroom, but you can't change where the house is. We saw one property that looked amazing. Extension, great price, decent sized rooms. But when we walked around the neighborhood after the viewing, it just didn't feel right. Loud music, cars parked on the pavement, people smoking outside all day. Not the atmosphere we wanted to come home to. So, take a few minutes before or after each viewing to walk around the area. Notice how the street feels, how neighbors keep their gardens, what the noise level is like. It's better to buy a smaller or less updated home in a good area than a perfect house in the wrong one. Trust your gut, location really does matter. At this point, I was exhausted. Honestly, I just wanted to lie down right there on the driveway. But you know what they say, finish what you started, or something like that. So we pushed through, kept going with the weeds and the edges, and eventually the sun started to set. That's when we decided to wrap things up and admire the little bit of progress we made. All the greenery went straight into the bin. And yes, if you are in the UK, I know the green bin isn't actually for garden waste. But we didn't have our garden waste bin yet. We had to order a new one for £30 because there wasn't one with the house. Such a shame. After the cleanup, it was definitely time to call it a night. A few days later, we were back at it again, this time starting with cutting the grass. So, while we do that, let's talk about the next point on our list. Tip number 3. Bring a list of questions. Before your first viewing, prepare a list of things you want to ask. At the beginning, we didn't. We would leave a viewing and suddenly think, oh, we should have asked about the roof. Or, wait, did that house even have a boiler? You can probably find great checklists online. Look on Reddit, YouTube, or even ask ChatGPT. Some good questions to ask in our experience are: how old is the boiler and when was it last serviced? Has the roof ever been replaced or repaired? Are there any known damp or drainage issues? What's included in the sale? Take notes while you are there. If you are comparing multiple houses, it's easy to forget which one had what. Having a written list helps you stay organized and confident when making an offer. So we cut and then cut some more. We even switched to the smaller lawnmower just to tackle the taller, stubborn patches of grass. Once it was all down, we raked everything up and tossed it into the brown bin for garden waste. Finally, the right one this time. Of course, it took way longer than we expected. It was a Sunday, so we weren't in a rush. But still, Sundays are supposed to be for relaxing, right? Apparently, not for us. I guess there is no rest for the wicked. Anyway, as we carry on with the garden, let's talk about point number 4. Tip number 4 might not be quite obvious, but don't always trust the listing's measurements. Online listing can be optimistic. We once viewed a house that looked perfect on paper. The ad said it had a huge first floor with spacious bedrooms, but when we got there, we immediately felt something was off. The rooms were tiny, like barely space for a double bed. The upstairs floor area was way smaller than the listing claimed. Later, the agent admitted the measurements were wrong. It happens more often than you think. Sometimes it's a genuine mistake, and sometimes it's just a creative use of the measuring tape. If something feels small, it probably is. Photos can be deceiving. Wide-angle lenses make rooms look twice as big and much brighter than they really are. So, when you are inside, trust your own sense of space. Step into the corners, picture your furniture, and imagine your daily routine. It's the best way to see if it actually fits your life, not just the photos. And then, of course, the small grass cutter decided it had had enough and just stopped working. It was actually the first time we used it, but I think the grass was simply too tall for the little guy. Naturally, we still had plenty left to cut, so we had to perform a quick resuscitation. Greg took charge, gave it a little clean, then took it apart to see what had jumped inside. A quick cleanup later, and it was back to life, working like new again. So, while we carry on after fixing our lawnmower, let's move on to the next point on the list. The next tip number 5. Ask why they are actually selling the house. This is one of those simple questions that can actually tell you a lot. Sometimes the reason is totally fine. Maybe they are relocating for work, downsizing, or going through a life change like a divorce. But other times, the answer can hint at something deeper. Maybe they've had issues with noisy neighbors, damp, or they just want to move away from the area altogether. Of course, sellers and estate agents might not tell you the full story, but even the way they answer can be revealing. If they seem vague or uncomfortable, that's worth noting. For us, the seller were divorcing, which made sense and didn't raise any red flags. But asking that one question gave us a context. We understood the situation, and it helped us feel more confident about moving forward. It takes 10 seconds to ask, but it can save you from surprises later. The next tip is check the water pressure. If you can, turn on the taps or the shower during your viewing. It takes 5 seconds, but it can save you a lot of frustration later. We didn't do this, and we're quite lucky that our water pressure is perfect. However, our friend bought a house where the water pressure in the shower is quite low. And when asking the plumber about it, they said it's nothing they can really do. Low water pressure can sometimes be improved by a plumber, but not always. And honestly, if you love a proper hot shower, and who doesn't, it's worth checking before you get too attached to a house. A quick twist of a tap can tell you more than a long description in a listing ever will. Then we moved on to patch number 2 and followed the same routine: cutting the grass, raking it up, and loading it into the bin. We took turns with the lawnmowers since the smaller one is actually quite heavy due to the motor being right at the front, as you probably saw in the earlier clips. It definitely gives your arms a workout. We also had a bit of extra work to tackle in this area, which we got to a little later on. Tip number 7. Look for cracks inside and out. A few little cracks are completely normal. Every house settles over time. You will often see small hairline ones near windows or ceilings, and that's usually nothing to worry about. But large or diagonal cracks, especially around doors, windows, or outside walls, can be a sign of something more serious, like structural movement or corroded wall ties. Those kinds of repairs can be expensive, so it's worth noticing them early, before putting an offer and paying for a full survey. You will still want a proper survey later, definitely don't skip that. But training your eye to spot the obvious red flags can save you time and money. On the 9th of May, we jumped right back into it. This time to trim the hedges, which act as our fence separating us from the neighbors. At some point, I would love to replace them with a proper wooden or metal fence. Something a bit more low maintenance and definitely more aesthetic. We also tackled the flower bed next to the front door and trimmed back some ferns that were starting to take over around the palm tree. While the past us are working hard out there, let's move on to the next point on our list. Tip number 8. Check for foggy windows. If a window looks foggy or has condensation between the glass panes, that means the seal has failed. What people call a blown window. It's not dangerous, but it does mean that the view is restricted by the mist and the energy efficiency of the window is lower. It can no longer keep the cold out or allow energy generated by your heating system in. Replacing the glass isn't cheap, usually somewhere between 100 and 300 pounds per pane, and that can add up fast if a few are affected. We actually have 2 blown windows ourselves, and we are planning to try fixing them. So if you are curious how that goes, make sure you subscribe to see the results. Hopefully not a disaster. It's a small detail, but worth checking as you walk around, especially because it's so easy to miss during a viewing. Number 9 on our list is pay attention to floors. As you walk through a house, pay attention to how the floors feel under your feet. If you notice dips, slopes, or soft spots, don't just shrug it off. It could be a sign of problems with the floor joists or the foundation. A little unevenness is totally normal in older homes. They've had decades to settle. But big changes in level or bouncy floors can mean expensive repairs later. We didn't pay enough attention to this in our house, and now we are dealing with uneven joists. Let's just say it's not a fun weekend project. So, learn from our mistake. Uneven floors aren't always just character. Sometimes they are a clue. The next one is watch out for mold and damp. Mold isn't just an eyesore, it can actually be a serious health issue. When you are viewing a house, check around windows, behind curtains, and inside cupboards if you can. Those are the sneaky spots where mold loves to hide. A bit of surface mold can usually be cleaned, but if it's coming back again and again, it's probably a sign of a bigger problem, like damp in the walls or poor ventilation. And don't ignore your nose. If the place smells musty or wet, that's your first warning sign. Fresh paint can cover marks, but it can't hide that smell for long. We wrapped up the front garden with results we were actually pretty happy with. It's definitely not perfect, but much better than before. Progress, not perfection, that's our motto around here. A few days later, we moved on to the back garden. There is just one patch of grass back there, but it came with its own set of challenges. A few old, heavy plant pots to shift, and ivy growing absolutely everywhere that needed clearing out. So, we got to work, cutting and clearing the patch, just to make it look a little bit more welcoming. And that gave us the perfect opportunity to move on to the next point on our list. Tip number 11. Don't ignore the doors. I know, it might sound silly, but hear me out. When you are viewing a house, most of the doors will already be open, so it's really easy not to notice them at all. But take a second to actually look at them. Check if they match, if they close properly, and what condition they are in. It might sound stupid, but sometimes sellers remove newer or better quality doors and replace them with older ones before they move out. It's rare, but it does happen. In our case, we are pretty sure a couple of the newer doors were swapped out before completion. Not the end of the world, just one of those small annoyances you only notice once you move in. So, next time you go for a viewing, especially a second one, give the doors a quick glance. It's a small detail, but one more way to protect yourself from unexpected surprises later. Last, But certainly not least on our list is tip 12. Look for a sign of damp outside. Before you leave your viewing, take a quick look at the exterior brickwork. If you notice white, powdery patches on the surface, that's salt coming through the bricks, a sign that moisture is moving through the wall. It's often called efflorescence, and while it's not always a major issue, it can point to rising damp or problems with the damp-proof cores, the barrier that stops moisture from traveling up your walls. Sometimes it's just cosmetic, but other times it means there is trapped moisture that needs attention. Either way, it's something worth noting and researching before you fall in love with the place. And that's our list of things we learned while viewing houses as first-time buyers. We are definitely not experts, just sharing the lessons we picked up along the way. If you are in the middle of house hunting, I hope this gives you a few extra things to keep an eye out for, and maybe help you avoid some of the mistakes we made. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. We would love to hear your experiences. What did you learn during your house viewings? Maybe together we can build the ultimate first-time buyer checklist. Thank you so much for watching and joining us on our journey, and we will see you very soon in the next one. Bye for now.